Hi everyone, it's Kathy Zilski. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm really excited to share a fun, colorful project using some brand new products from the one and only Gina K Designs. And this project features painting with your dye inks and glimmer paste and all kinds of just good things. You know, it's good stuff. All right, let's jump in and look at the products that I'm using today. This is a brand new set from Gina K Designs called Crafty Notes. And come on, ladies and crafty gents, you know, look at all this cute crafty stuff. Look at that. We're the perfect blend and the little pad in the blender, right? Am I right? Seriously super cute. And I knew I wanted to play with this set. So I pulled out cubes of my favorite Gina K inks in a rainbow. And I needed enough colors because I'm going to work with that little paint palette. I'm also going to be using some Amalgam ink, one of these life-changing brushes, and that's no hype, they're life-changing. I'm also going to use a paintbrush. Now I have a really pricey one, but you don't need a pricey one, you just need a number 2, something tiny. There are also coordinating dies available for this. They come already cut apart, and Gina's die sets come on magnet boards, which is really nice for storage purposes. All right, so I'm going to be cutting some things out, and I'm also going to be using Gina's cardstock. This is just her heavy weight cardstock, and I've got also some Tim Holtz watercolor paper here. That is all I need for cardstock. The card itself is pretty simple, but this video is going to be a little longer than maybe most of my videos because there's a lot of little steps, but it's fun. I promise you, I'm not going to overwhelm you. Well, I might. No, probably not. First things first. Going to be stamping this image of the paint palette with the Amalgam ink. Now the cool thing about Amalgam ink is it is an all-purpose ink. You can stamp and use Copic markers with it. You can stamp and use watercolors with it. You can stamp and just stamp because it's a really nice deep black. So I wanted to use this Amalgam ink because I knew I'm going to be doing a little bit of watercoloring with Gina's inks, and I knew it was the perfect ink. It's very all-purpose. It saves you from having to have a specific ink for a specific purpose. Of course, I'm using my Misties so that I can stamp twice and get a good impression. And I always stamp 2 images in case I mess up. Just a little side note. I've got 2 jars of water here to use today. I've got a little paper towel. Very important to have something to blot off on. And I've got my paintbrush, and again, this is an expensive brush that came as part of a travel kit. I love it, but do I really need this brush? No, I really. It's way beyond my skill. But you know what? Sometimes you got to have the Cadillac to drive to the Derby. I have no idea what that means. But what I do know is I am using my Tim Holtz Glass Medium Matte as my palette. And what I'm going to do is just lay down a little clean water, and I learned this from, gosh, I think I was sitting next to Lydia Fielder from Understand Blue. I would not have known about this, but she taught me a very few basics about watercolor. So you put a little water down, not too much. Then you take a damp brush, pick up some of your ink, and just start painting. Now you can see why having a very delicate little brush when you have delicate little images is helpful. I am not a skilled painter. I'm just going to go on the record. I'm not trying to tell you how to paint, but I will tell you that a tiny brush is going to help with images. I did not end up painting this perfectly, but I think it looked pretty good in the end. But it's a process of coming and layering a little more and trying to get that depth. You get a feel for it, I will say that. So you'll, take your brush and get it damp and take some of the water off. And the other nice thing about the medium matte is you can just wipe it clean. So that's the approach for painting this little palette. And I think the palette is so cute. But the other part about this project is you may not have watercolors. You may not want to invest in a watercolor palette. You might have some inks and you're thinking, what else can I do with my water or my dye-based inks that are water-based? Well, you can add water to them and paint. So that's what I'm doing, just little tiny bits. And you can see I don't need to put much ink down on the palette because little goes a long way. So you're not even using much ink in this process. And I think that's a really positive way to use your tools as well. So now I'm going to speed it up because you got the idea, right? You lay down a little bit of water, not too much, pick up your color, pop it in, blend it out to the best of your ability, and then what I ended up doing was taking a drier brush and coming into the left of each little palette square to try to create that shading effect. Of course, if you had Copic markers, you could do the same thing, but the thing I like about this is you're really just working with one color at a time, and I think that's easier than trying to blend two colors. It is for me as a, well, I'm still a beginner painter. I have no mastery of this process, but I do know that working with one color is easier than working with two in the same space, if that makes sense. So again, laying down a little bit of that orange. And all of the Gina colors that I'm using today are listed below this video. I just didn't want to spend the time to name them all out, but I personally own all of Gina's ink cubes, and I have fallen in love with her ink colors because her ink colors are beautiful and they match her cardstocks perfectly. And this is the first time I've ever tried painting with them. I've certainly seen other people do it, and I thought, you know what? When I saw this palette and how fun it could be to layer in that rainbow of color, I was sold. It's not perfect, but it's hand painted. It shouldn't be perfect. The next step is some ink blending. Again, with the same, well, mostly the same palette. I dropped a few colors out. I've got this piece of cardstock, and it's already been trimmed to 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. Both panels that I'm working with today are these sizes, and that it'll all make sense in a little bit. But what I decided to do was take my life-changing brush, and I have a whole set of these, right? They come in different sizes. I picked a size that I thought was great. I could have gone a little smaller, because what I wanted to do was create a modified rainbow using most of the colors across the lower third of my cardstock. And what surprised me was how beautifully these inks blend as well. I've never blended with Gina's inks. I've stamped with them, but I've never done ink blending with her dye inks, and this just surprised me. I'm just going to say it. I did not expect it to turn out so well. And the brushes, of course, they have changed my life. I'm not good with the ink blending tools, but these brushes give me new hope. And the other part is I didn't have to clean off my brush properly between inks. I just tapped it off on that white scrap to the right. Now here's another thing that I'm kind of geeking out about lately. The Tonic Nouveau Glimmer Paste in Moonstone. This stuff is just cool. So you take a palette knife, and I've got this set that has this really cute lavender handled knife. Take out what you think is going to be right, and this is where I get very nervous because I know I'm only going to get one shot, and you just put down a nice, as even as you can get it. Don't go over it too many times because you don't want it to be mucky. You just want to get a thin coat down, scrape off the excess, and now this thing has to dry. And it has to dry for a while. This is, there's no magic here to speed it up. You have to let it dry. And so I set this aside for about an hour and a half, and that was, well, just about the right amount of time. While I was waiting, I took some scrap cardstock and I cut out a template. Now I learned this from Gina K, and I think it's brilliant. If you've spent all this time painting something and then you mess it up in the die cut process, I'm just gonna say it, that sucks. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh gosh, spent all this time, messed it up. So what you do is you create a template so you can perfectly frame it out, tape it down, and then your die will just lock. It locks right into that opening, and so you can tape that in place and then run that through your die cut machine. And today I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum 6. I love this machine. It's been a really good tool for me. But the best part is it cuts beautifully, and with the template, I did not ruin it. That's always the goal. That's always the goal. Right now I'm going to use the little grid on my media mat to mark off 1 inch, because what I want to do is take my other panel that is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 and cut that inch away. I just wanted to have the remaining pieces, all right, top and bottom, just like that. Now I'm going to score my card base. This is a top folding card. It's going to be 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall, again using the same Gina cardstock. And I always like to tape my card bases closed until they're done. I don't like things to pop up, and this cardstock is so heavy, which is wonderful, but you also need it to be flat. Well, if you're me, I need to see things straight down. Okay, moving on to the sentiment. I'm going to use the Wishing You a Colorful Birthday. And I'm going to bring in my little Misty Creative Corner just to make sure it's straight. That does help. And here's the thing, when you're doing a simple card, and this is complicated in its graphic steps, but the execution of design is really simple. Having things be straight is important. That's just a fact. So I use the tools that help me. Now, foam tape. Check this out. This tape was from the Big Mama tape roll from 3M. I've had this since the spring of 2017. Amazing. It has lasted a long time. All right, I'm doubling up the foam tape on the palette because I want that to rise up just a little bit above the other two. Now my panel is dry, and what I'm going to do to flatten it even more, although it did dry pretty well, I'm going to take 2 plates that I use for paper flattening only, although today I accidentally cut with them. Put the piece between a piece of copy paper and just run it back and forth. This is another great tip for getting something that has had water or something that is liquidy on it to be a little flatter. And that worked really well, actually. It flattened out really nicely. Next, I've taken off the backers off the foam tape, and I'm using my Score Buddy to help me line up the panels on the base piece. This is a great tip if you have trouble lining things up. I've done this on my Misty, but it also works really well with your Score Buddy because it has that little edge. I also had to take a mono sand eraser and get a little bit of the overhang glimmer. But see how quickly you can just press that down into the corner, both pieces, and you know that it's lined up on top and bottom. Now I'm going to take a piece of fun foam and put it onto my panel, but I wanted to share this. I am going to provide this as a free download on my blog. All it is are successive mat sizes for an A2 card. I can never keep this information in my brain, and if you're like me and would like to have something like this in your craft space, I got you covered. I'm just going to use some score tape to adhere my foam tape. I usually use another tape, but I ran out, and this stuff is very sticky, and I'm a fan of fun foam. Say that 3 times fast. I'm a fun fan of foam. I like fun foam. It's really affordable stuff, and it gives you this perfectly even dimension. I'm a fan. So I put that on to the colorful base, and then I just use Gina K Connect glue for the next thing. And here's the thing I love. You can embed messages that no one will ever see. Gina will never see this, and her birthday actually has recently passed, so Gina, this is coming to you next year. But I love the liquid adhesive. Not only is it really strong, it also allows you to move things around a little until you get them right where you want them. Next, I added my paint palette. See, this is very clean and simple at its core, right? That's the finished card. But there's a lot of color combined with this minimal aesthetic. I really love this. I love how it turned out. I love Gina's products. I love how versatile they are. And I think it's always a good thing to try to get more uses out of the supplies you have. So thanks for watching my video today, and I would love to have you become a subscriber to my channel, and I'll see you here again with another card project soon.